Senator Roberts.
Thank you. Thank you for appearing again. I'm going to start with a sincere compliment, Mr. DeBell. I've been impressed with your frankness and your directness and your succinctness. You convey a lot of confidence. And I would also like to start by complimenting the Reserve Bank for the answers I received in the last estimates, which after examination were complete and factual. So, question 1, Chair. The Reserve Bank has now signed on to the International Central Bank Digital Currency Platform. Project Dunbar, and I quote, aims to develop prototype shared platforms for cross-border transactions which will allow financial institutions to transact directly with each other in the digital currencies issued by participating central banks. Now, as I understand it, Mr. DeBell, Australia will be testing this platform along with Malaysia, Singapore and South Africa, which suggests we have a digital currency to use to test the platform. Where is the Reserve Bank on the development process for the Reserve Bank digital currency, and what's the time frame here for testing and implementation?
Can I pass that one to Ms Bullock, please, Senator? She's the expert in this space, or has carriage of this at least.
Thank you, Senator. So the first thing to note is that Project Dunbar doesn't have, it's a proof of concept, so it isn't I distinguish it from a pilot. Pilot is where you actually have actual real money. This isn't a pilot, it's actually a proof of concept. So really what it's about is going through the technical infrastructure you might need, the legal arrangements you might need, the participation requirements you might need to set this sort of multi-currency approach up. So there is no central bank digital currency. We don't have one. The other central banks don't have one. It's purely a proof of concept. If you like, it's a little bit of a desktop exercise with a little bit of experimentation with technical approaches to do it. So there's no actual central bank digital currencies involved.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to go on to your second question, if that's all right.
Okay.
So your second question was about where we are at with the central bank digital currency. So we've had a multi-year process in this. We've done some small experiments. We've experimented internally with the concept of a wholesale central bank digital currency. Again, it's not real, it's just sort of a mock-up, if you like. And we've done that internally to see whether or not individual banks could perhaps use it for settlement between them. We've also expanded that fairly recently. There was a report in December of Project Atom, which was an experiment again with, it was with Commonwealth Bank, National Australia Bank, Perpetual and Consensus and ourselves. And the concept here was, again, a proof of concept. It wasn't a pilot, a proof of concept to see whether or not central bank digital currency paired with tokenised syndicated loans would actually make a more efficient way of having syndicated loans transacted through the economy. We released the report on that in December, and it was, I think it proved that there were some efficiencies in this area, but...
Excuse me, did you say there were inefficiencies? Or
efficiencies.
Efficiencies.
So, efficiencies. So syndicated loans is a very manual process and quite lengthy. And what the project proved was if you tokenised the syndicated loans, you had a central bank digital currency to transact amongst the various players in the syndicated loan, that made that a much more efficient process. Whether or not you can do it with normal payment systems as well is another question, but we didn't test that. So there's that. We're also participating, as you mentioned, in Project Dunbar with the Bank for International Settlements Innovation Hub and those 3 other countries. And we've recently formed ourselves a central bank digital currency group in the Payments Policy Department, and we're going to be engaging with the Digital Finance Cooperative Research Centre, which is looking at all sorts of things digital. We're going to be engaging with them on looking at central bank digital currencies as well. So that's a little bit of a potted history of where we're at with our work on this.
Okay, thank you. If a new digital currency is to be created out of electronic ledger entries, will existing amounts of cash be converted into digital dollars? The public may be confused about how this is going to work. Can the Reserve Bank please provide a simple overview of what happens after the project gets the green light? Where's the value coming from? So when we have it cash?
So,
That's what we're assessing, Senator, really is exactly that, is there value given we have a, pretty decent payment system as it is, and which includes cash, clearly, but also electronic settlement. And that's really, you've sort of nailed the question, really, which is there value in this? Is it worth the investment at this stage or not? Michelle, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
the only thing I'd add, Senator, is that there is no suggestion in which we are getting rid of cash. This concept is not to replace cash, and it hasn't even been decided that we would do it. This would be a decision not for the Reserve Bank, but for, in fact, the government. It wouldn't be replacing cash. So that's very clear.
What I was really, when I was talking about the value, I wasn't talking about the value of the process. Is it going to be more efficient? Is it worth doing? So I appreciate your answer in that, and quite clearly that's one interpretation, a valid interpretation of my question. But what I was getting at was, if someone's got so much value in Australian dollars, how will that be converted into digital currency dollars or whatever the currency is? So will they still have that value, purchasing value?
Sure. So the way that most central banks are looking at this around the world is that the central bank itself won't be providing people with digital money. It will work like cash does. So at the moment, if you want cash, you go to your ATM or your bank and you withdraw some cash from your bank account. A digital currency, if we had one, would work in a very similar way. You would go into your bank and your bank would have presumably a digital wallet, or you'd have a digital wallet, and you would take some money out of your bank account and you would put it into central bank digital currency, just like cash. So you can think about it in a very parallel way.
Yes, but if someone's got $2,000 in cash today in their bank account, will that give them the equivalent purchasing power if there's a conversion into digital currency?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
It would be exactly the same as if it was a $100 bill or a $100 on your mobile wallet. Okay,
thank you. Now the BIS is involved. So one specific case, our foreign exchange reserves are used to settle international transactions. These will now be replaced with the Reserve Bank digital dollars if it goes ahead. Is the process to simply replace the US dollars we have in reserve with US government issued crypto dollars or a similar value basis digital currency?
No.
No. Sorry, Guy, did you want to take this?
Straight to the chase. No, Senator, we would still continue to hold US dollar reserves in the instruments we currently hold them in, which is primarily US Treasuries. Okay,
that's pleasing to hear. What are the risks in doing this? If this is, for example, what would happen if this was handled badly? Not necessarily from the Reserve Bank, but for the people you're dealing with overseas, if the system wasn't tight? For what are the various risks that you can foresee that need to be managed?
So and this is why I think there's a lot of water to flow under the bridge before any advanced economies really have launched into this. There are obviously cyber issues. You need to make sure that the system is secure. Overseas consultations demonstrate that people are very concerned about privacy, which is a very valid concern. But at the same token, you're also concerned about use of digital currency for criminal purposes, so there's a balance there. Another concern that is one that most central banks identify is concerns about the banking system and whether or not there might be a flight of deposits, if you like, to the central bank, to central bank digital currency, which would have implications for banks' balance sheets, potentially make it easier to run on banks if people were concerned about banks. So there's a whole lot of financial stability risks and issues associated with it. So that's just a sample of some of the issues that need to be considered if we were going to go this direction and have some sort of what I would call retail central bank digital currency.
Thank you. Two more questions, Chair. Digital or cryptocurrency is not backed by any asset. It's literally an exercise in trust that the government can protect the value of someone's currency. Is this the time now to start talking about getting an asset backing behind this new currency, such as gold?
Senator, just like cash at the moment, it's a fiat. It would be a fiat currency, which is to say it isn't backed by anything. And you're right; it's all about trust in the institutions of the country, in the government, in the Reserve Bank. So in that sense, it would be just like cash. If we were going down this route, it would be an unbacked currency.
But it's backed by the government's capacity to, raise revenue from its citizens, basically.
Backed by the government's capacity to raise revenue, did you say?
Yeah.
Thank you. Last question. During COVID, there's been a hell of a lot of money spent on non-productive outcomes. As much as food and rent can be considered non-productive, they're essential, but they're non-productive. The outcome of long-term borrowing for short-term gain is inflation. Is spending on productive capacity, roads, railways, bridges, dams and irrigation, in this recovery phase, likely to produce a lower inflation outcome across forward estimates than continuing to spend on what can only be described as economic sherbet?
I don't know. I mean, that's an interesting question, Senator. I mean, there is a lot of, I'm not sure it's drawing that distinction. I think food I would regard as a pretty productive and essential essential thing for people to consume. So, I mean, we build roads for a purpose, not just because, which is to satisfy, people wanting to use them, and same with food and same with shelter. So, not quite sure how we can draw such a clean line between what's productive and unproductive.
Well, perhaps, food is essential, as I said. Perhaps spending on non-productive assets, entertainment. Instead of travelling overseas, people are going on buying new cars, that kind of thing. What I'm talking about is those spending on such items that aren't, that may be essential but not producing increased wealth could lead to inflation. That's the risk. On the other hand, spending on something that increases productive capacity, like a dam with irrigation systems to supply increased food productivity and lower the cost of food, leaves people better off and wealthier overall. That's what I was getting at, a productive capacity rather than just consumption.
I mean, there is a reasonable amount of money being dollars investment in, in infrastructure at the moment. That's increased quite a bit, both from the Commonwealth and the state government. So that sort of spending is absolutely happening. Again, I'm still not quite sure I would draw such a clean distinction. I mean, in the end, people consume what they wanted to consume, and I'm not sure it's up to us too much to tell them what's good and bad about that, but within reason.
Well, that's a wonderful statement to hear coming into my ears now. I love that. But anyway, I think you. Sorry.
I said I thought you might.
So what we've got though is an acknowledgement that there is money being spent on infrastructure. You've answered my question. Yep. I just personally believe, Chair, that we need to spend more on improving our productive capacity. Thank you very much. Again, Chair, I'd like to put on record that the Reserve Bank always answers quickly, succinctly and factually. So thank you. It's really appreciated.
Dr. de Bell, you've got a fan there.
Yep, he has.
Thank you.